Good morning. Welcome to Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. We get together each and every Thursday morning to give you access to different aspects of the law. Today we're going to be talking about personal injury as a whole. Now, personal injury envelops a whole lot of different things. Car accidents, probably the number one bit of it. Slip and fall, trip and fall accidents. If you've been hurt on the job, any of those incidents, if you have questions about, make sure and give us a call. The phone number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. We'll be here to answer the questions for the next 30 minutes. On our panel to answer the questions for you on personal injury today from the Maguire Law Firm, first is Ian Maguire.
Good to see you, Dave.
Also from Maguire Law is Mike Smith.
Good morning, Dave.
And from the O'Neill Law Firm, Rick O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, we got an interesting group with us today. Of course, Mike and Rick have both been on the show a number of times. Interesting enough, Rick, when he started his career, he started off before he became a lawyer, was actually in law enforcement. So he has that background, which is really interesting for plaintiff's cases and also for criminal defense work, which he still does. So he has a unique way of looking at things, probably from having that law enforcement background. And of course, Mike has been with our firm for, he's on his second year with our firm, but he spent decades on the defense side. So it's been amazing for us to have Mike working with us and instead of against us, which was always very challenging because he's very good at what he does. But you know, personal injury is primarily it's all we do in our firm, and
right.
Primarily what Rick's firm does. And as you said, Dave, it encompasses a lot of different things. And so if you have any questions in regards to whether it's car wrecks or fall cases or anything involving injury, just give us a call at 843-848-8080. That's 843-848-8080.
Well, as we mentioned, car accidents probably the number one case that you'll be getting as far as personal injury is concerned. Now, if you've been in an accident, you're probably going to start getting calls from the opposition insurance company almost immediately. And a lot of people might think, I can handle this myself without a lawyer. Why do they need a lawyer? Why shouldn't they handle it themselves?
Well, there's a lot of different aspects, Dave, to an automobile accident. One of the first things that pops up is just people trying to deal with their automobile. And I know this is about personal injury, but that's one of the first things that pops up.
People need to get their car back.
Yeah, they want to get their car back. They've got places to go, appointments to keep, work to get to. And then the medical aspect of it, you get a bodily injury adjuster on the phone, and a lot of times what you'll see is, we'll give you $1,000 and we'll pay your bills for the next 30 days, or we'll pay your bills up to a certain amount.
Right.
And people a lot of times will think, well, that's not too bad, until they get the $25,000 ER bill. And then you realize that it could be problematic when they do something like that.
And then the insurance company who said they were going to pay your bills doesn't want to pay that bill. They start objecting to that bill, and now you've got collection agencies calling you. Even if you've got health insurance, sometimes the hospitals elect not to accept your health insurance and go with the auto insurance coverage. So yeah, you really have to have your guard up.
Yeah, and people that come by, I came from New York originally, and the way the laws work for personal injury is completely different there than it is here. And of course, we have so many people in our area that have come from somewhere else, and they expect the laws here to work the same way as they did wherever they came from. And it really is different in South Carolina.
Right.
Even, you take a contiguous state like North Carolina, and there's so many small differences, but they can be significant, those small differences in a case. So it's always good to sit down. If not sit down with an attorney, at least call and ask questions if you've been in a wreck and you have any concerns. Because before you sign anything, definitely speak to somebody.
Right. And consultations are free as far as personal injury is concerned. So if you've been in an accident and you're wondering what's going on or what you should do, before you do anything, call an attorney's office first and then find out what you should do, and they'll guide you in the right direction. Also, speaking of which, if you want to stop by the Maguire Law Firm office, there is a free book called Mistakes Made by Accident Victims in South Carolina. Again, absolutely free. You can stop by the office, 1600 North Oak Street in Myrtle Beach, or you can go online to maguirelawfirm.com and download a copy of the book for absolutely free there as well. Now, staying with insurance and staying with accidents real quick. Insurance, a lot of people when they buy their own car insurance, they're like, okay, well, I bought insurance, that's all I need, I've got the minimum, that's fine.
I'm fully covered. That's what you hear a lot.
Yeah.
Fully covered.
Fully covered. And then also a lot of times when they come to you and they have a case to open up, they say, I don't want to use my own insurance, but that's a bad idea, right?
We get that more than I'm frankly shocked at how many times an injured person will come in and say, I don't want to use my own insurance. Well, that's why you buy it. Is utilize it, because a lot of times in South Carolina the minimum limits are $25,000, and I mentioned before, I know I threw that $25,000 number out there, but a lot of times some of our providers in an ER visit alone can exceed $25,000 in bills.
Oh, yeah.
And that person that has the state minimum limits, you'll find yourself needing additional underinsured motorist coverage, and really the bang for the buck, it's so much worth it. Don't try to save a penny because it'll cost you pounds later.
Right.
It's that's what we're joking about. Fully covered. If having the minimum limits doesn't cover you if you've been injured by somebody else that has minimum limits, it's going to be gone before you leave the hospital. Frankly, if you spend a night in the hospital, so. I know it's an affordability thing for most people, but as Mike said, you're doing yourself and your family a big favor if you look into getting underinsurance. So when somebody that hits you and they're at fault has minimum limits, you have something to fall back on. There's something called MedPay. You can look into that. But God forbid you were the one at fault. You want to have enough insurance, not the minimum limits, but something greater than that. So if somebody is injured due to your mistake, that they're not going after your assets. So it's really important to understand insurance and sit down with your insurance agent and ask questions, because it could make a big difference later.
And don't be financially foolish in thinking that you can save those pennies here and it not come back and bite you later. One of the things that we see a lot of times is an insurance carrier cannot get in touch with their own insured to find out about the facts of an accident. And even though it's a rear end collision, the insurance companies say, well, we don't want to pay you right now because we haven't heard from our insured yet. So you're sitting there, you can't get a car because you've got the cheapest insurance you could get at the time, and you don't have a collision coverage or something like that. And now comes time for rental. You didn't check that box for rental coverage, and you're struggling, because the insurance company's saying, well, hey, I don't know who was at fault. I don't know what all the facts are because I can't get in touch with my insured. And it can put you behind the 8 ball financially.
Yeah, you can't get back and forth to your doctor's appointments. You can't go to work. You can't get your kids to school. It's a mess.
Tell you what, we're going to run to a break here real quick. When we get back, we would love to hear if you have any personal injury questions, whether it's automobile accidents, slip and fall, trip and fall accidents, or if you've been hurt on the job. Give us a call. We'll be happy to answer those for you. Phone number's on your screen. You're watching Legal Access here, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. Welcome back. It's Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. Today's topic is personal injury. If you have any questions about automobile accidents, slip and fall, trip and fall accidents, or even if you've been hurt on the job, give us a call. Phone number's on your screen, 843-848-8080. Let's go ahead and go to the phones right now. Kenny's with us in Myrtle Beach. Hi, Kenny. Thanks for holding through the break. What's your question for the panel today?
Yes, I was wondering if you have an accident and you file a claim and you get paid for it, why would your insurance go up so high? They're taking all the money back that you got paid.
That's just the reality of life, and the problem is, lawyers, we have nothing to do with that. Most people luck out. They have an occasional accident. Their rates don't go up, but especially some carriers I've noticed, if you have even the smallest claim, a police report triggers that. They know about it, even if it's not your fault. They won't renew you, or they'll double your rates. And a lot of times your only recourse is just to change carriers. Shop around.
Yeah, shop around, and a lot of them will, if it's not your fault, not penalize you. But Rick's right. Sometimes it's just you just shake your head and go, why? How do they do that? But one thing I've learned after 30 plus years doing that is the insurance company's not losing money. It's
No. And it's a decision that's not made by the adjusters. It's a decision that's made by underwriting of the insurance company. And the thing that is so frustrating is that you buy underinsured motorist coverage to protect yourself, and you get involved in an accident that's not your fault, and the next thing you know, you utilize that UIM coverage and you do see a rate increase. Which is absolutely ridiculous because you had nothing to do with causing the accident. So it's very frustrating. It's an underwriting issue, and it's out of our control, and it's really out of the adjuster's control. So that's one of the unfortunate things that we see as a consequence of getting involved in an accident.
I see the same complaints with homeowners claims or renters claims.
Yeah.
You usually have a $5,000 deductible, but even the smallest claim, they're going to raise your rates for 2 or 3 years, and the raised rates are going to be more than your claim was. I mean, I just don't get it, but it's the reality of today's world with the insurance industry.
And I mean, it shouldn't give you trepidation, on the other hand, to file claims if you are not at fault and you're injured. I mean, that's what insurance is there for. But I think Rick's right. You just shop the market after that. If need be, and if you feel your company hasn't backed you properly, that's what you do to.
Yeah, a lot of times when
out
that
for yourself.
happens, you can get a new company even at a cheaper rate. So
Right. And typically, that accident will roll off your driving record in a few years, and you won't be assessed that penalty after, it's generally 3 years that it'll roll off.
Even if you're at fault, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. But generally speaking, in the cases that I've dealt with, I've seen that somebody's utilization of their own underinsured motorist coverage is typically much more financially beneficial than worrying about a few $100s every 6 months of an increase in premium. So don't hesitate to use it, because generally in the long run, you're going to come out ahead.
Yeah, and we do. Sorry, Rick. We do have that. I'm guaranteed in Rick's office as well, where people will have the underinsurance, and they'll be like, "Well, this isn't our fault. We don't want to use our underinsurance." That's what you paid for the underinsurance for. Absolutely use it. And if you're not going to use it, then get rid of it, because it's that's what it's there for. So
Right.
I think some people actually get underinsurance on their policy and don't really understand the purpose of it. Rick, is that
right, maybe the agent tells them, hey, you really should have this because the minimum limits per person in South Carolina are just $25,000. I mean, I don't know how many times over the years I've had to give people the bad news. Hey, you've lost a loved one in a car collision, and the only insurance coverage is $25,000, and that's hard to swallow.
Yeah, we cannot emphasize enough, really, that you spend the extra few dollars and get adequate insurance for both to protect yourself if you're at fault, and equally important, if God forbid you or somebody in your family is injured, serious injury, you're going to have that underinsurance. And even look into umbrella policies if possible to protect you and your family.
And another thing, a few years ago, the state of South Carolina, instead of really focusing on points on your license or prior wrecks, really the more the focus for the underwriting now is your credit rating. That goes a long way to what type of rates you can get and what type of coverages.
And what is the logic behind that? Because I know if I was sitting there, I'd be scratching my head.
Apparently, the research indicates the better your credit rating, the more safe a driver you're going to be, the more responsible of a person, and less likely to take risk.
Wow.
Well, Kenny, hopefully that helps you out. You might need to do a little bit of shopping around, but there are a lot of companies out there that are willing to give good drivers good rates. Thanks for calling in. Appreciate that. If you have any phone calls or any questions you want to ask as far as personal injury is concerned, today is the day. Give us a call. The number is on your screen. Let's go to North Myrtle Beach right now. Robert's on with us. Hi, Robert. Thanks for hanging on. What's your question for us today?
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. I just tuned in as you were talking about uninsured motorists, underinsured, and I just have a question regarding stacked UM and UIM limits in South Carolina. I understand that if you're a multiple car owner that you can stack the limits as well if you have multiple auto policies. Just wondering if you guys can comment on that a little bit.
We can corroborate that that is the law in South Carolina.
Right.
I think North Carolina has recently changed their law last year where they're now allowing stacking. Ian, your license in North Carolina can...
Yeah, it's frankly, for injured people, the laws in South Carolina are a lot more favorable in that respect, and honestly, they make a lot more sense for overall. But yeah, they've loosened it up a little bit in North Carolina, which is a good thing. But Mike, you want to explain the stacking?
Yeah, I was going to say, let me explain what the question was about. And typically in South Carolina, what happens is you'll get involved in an accident and you'll have the liability insurance that will pay out. So that's the first layer. And then you have the vehicle that you were in, that underinsured policy, so that would be the second layer. In some states that's offset by the liability coverage, but in South Carolina you get to stack it on top of the liability coverage. And then you may have 3 other automobiles at home, like in my situation. I've got different vehicles that you can stack those UIM coverages on top of. So it's not just a set off and then you don't get any benefit from it. It's if I've got 4 vehicles with 100,000, say, I had the potential for $400,000 of UIM coverage, and it makes it's an excellent recovery tool on a large loss in this state that a lot of other states don't have. So we are very fortunate there.
Yeah. One thing I see is if you have a motorcycle, if at all possible, demand, scream to put that motorcycle policy, if at all possible, on your family policy. Because if you have a motorcycle policy and it's by itself, you're not going to be able to avail yourself of the stacking. And that's a way that insurance companies are limiting your protection.
And unfortunately, when there is injuries in a motorcycle case, those people on the motorcycle
Generally pretty hurt.
Generally are pretty hurt and need that insurance. So I know we're about to run to a break, but again, just to recap, sort of, you have the at fault. If they're at fault, you're going to get that insurance. Then you're going to go and get your underinsurance. And as Mike said, you could actually stack the various policies. It's not guaranteed that you get that, but you have, it's available to you. So if you went to court, nobody would ever mention insurance policies. But if you got enough of a verdict from the jury, you'd be able to collect by stacking those policies, or even in a settlement situation.
And another interesting stacking rule is you may be in your friend's car when the accident happens, and so you'll get the underinsured, if your claim is big enough, you'll get the underinsured motorist coverage of the vehicle that you were in, and then you can look to your at-home policy and be able to stack that as well.
And a great question, and thank you for asking it.
Yeah, obviously, Robert, you know what you're talking about when you bring up stacking and UIM and everything else that's involved with that. If you have any other questions you'd like to ask today, we got about another 10 minutes left. Got to run to a break right now, but when we get back, we'd love to talk to you right here on Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. Welcome back. It's Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. Personal injury is our topic here today. We've been talking a lot about car accidents so far, and if you have any other questions, please feel free. Give us a call. The number's on your screen. Let's move on to just like premise liability cases right now. Slip and fall, trip and fall accidents. If you get hurt on somebody else's premises, is the insurance company going to come back to you and say, well, you should have watched where you were going. It's your own fault for not paying attention?
Every time, Dave. Every time. Without fail, that's the number one defense that every insurance defense lawyer or adjuster will raise, is that you should have watched where you're walking. And unfortunately, I've tried some pretty big cases in the past on premises liability with devastating injuries. And you'll talk to the jury afterwards and say, well, why did you do what you did? And they'll say they should have watched where they were walking. So it's real. And
Or that same jury will say, you know, the premises owner had an understanding of the foreseeable danger, and they
Right.
should have fixed it. So that's the competing.
You have that.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that you have to be aware of when you talk about that, watch where you're walking, and we've made this comment before, is think about when you walk into a department store and they've got all these placards and sale items and they're at eye level because they want to catch your vision and want to draw your eyes to that particular product. You can walk into a restaurant and you see some designs that are up high that draw your eyes to
Right.
the menu or whatever. And it's, they'll look at you and say, well, you should have watched where you're walking, and the store is doing everything they can to pull your vision up off the floor.
Yeah.
So you've got that defense to the defense, if you will.
Yeah.
Do they ever go by percentages, like as far as who's at fault? I mean, whether it's a premises liability or even a car accident, if they say, well, this person pulled out in front of me, well, you had time to stop, but you should have stopped.
Virtually every time.
Yeah,
That's
and-
part of the process.
And the good thing in South Carolina, we have a situation where a jury could come back with a percentage finding. They could find the plaintiff at 10% at fault, and then the defendant at 90% at fault. It's a comparative type system, as opposed to, say, North Carolina, where they still have what's called contributory, where if technically the plaintiff is 1% at fault, there's no recovery, which is really, really harsh, and I think it's sort of archaic, to be honest, and it's a lot fair for a jury to be able to say, they both had some comparative negligence, but we found the defendant was more than 50% at fault, or they might find the plaintiff more than 50, but they have a right to come to that decision, which I think is a fantastic way to handle it.
We're talking about personal injury today. We still got a minute or two for you to call if you have any last minute questions as far as car accidents, slip and fall accidents, trip and falls, things like that. As far as statute of limitations is concerned, if you've been hurt in a car accident or if you've been hurt on somebody else's property, how long do you have before you can bring that to a law firm and get a case going?
Really a multi-layer, Rick.
Yeah.
The first level is any type of a charitable, municipal, government-related. It's usually 2 years.
Yeah.
The statute of limitations. Even some of the utility companies are considered quasi-government, and there's only a 2-year statute. But generally, I'll let you guys.
Yeah. Generally, it's 3 years. Even with the statutory 2 years, there's a way to file a claim to extend it, but you have to do that within a year, I believe. The bottom line is, if you've been injured, don't wait around to talk to somebody, to an attorney. Get to an attorney. There's no reason that something should sit around for 3 years unless maybe you're recovering medically. There are exceptions, but generally, sit down with an attorney shortly after you've been in an accident or have an incident where you've been injured. Because usually if the statutory time has run out, you're going to be out of luck, and that's unfortunate.
Children, minor children, there's an exception. Until they turn 18, and they get 1 year to bring a claim if a parent hadn't brought a claim on for them.
And Dave, one thing quickly, don't be the tough guy or tough lady.
Right.
If you've been in an accident and you feel like you're hurt, go get checked out.
Yep.
Absolutely. Tell you what, we're going to have to finish our show here. We appreciate the phone calls, appreciate you watching. Next week when we get together, we're going to be talking about DUI. That'll be our topic next week right here on Legal Access, brought to you by the Maguire Law Firm. If you have any questions we didn't answer for you on air, make sure and give us an email and we'll answer for you off air. legalaccess@wmbfnews.com. And remember, questions about personal injury are given a free consultation. So don't be afraid to call a law firm if you have any questions about your situation. See you again next Thursday.
You may wish to consult a lawyer to obtain case-specific legal advice. Information regarding lawyers can be located online or by contacting the South Carolina Bar Lawyer Referral Service, toll-free at 1-800-868-2284. If you are currently represented by an attorney, you should direct all legal questions to your